Hi, we're sisters, Amy and Nancy Harrington, the founders of the Passionistas Project. We've created an inclusive sisterhood where passion-driven women come to get support, find their purpose, and feel empowered to transform their lives and change the world. On every episode, we discuss the unique ways in which each woman is following her passions, talk about how she defines success, and explore her path to breaking down the barriers that women too often face. Today, we're talking with Melissa Fitzgerald and Mary McCormack, authors of the new book, What's Next? A Backstage Pass to the West Wing, its cast and crew, and its enduring legacy of service. Melissa is an actor, producer, and social justice advocate. As an actor, she's best known for her 7-year role as Carol on the award-winning television series The West Wing. While in Hollywood, Melissa co-founded Voices in Harmony, a mentoring program that uses theater to work with historically underserved teens. In 2013, she left Hollywood to champion justice system reform at Allrise, where she is at the forefront of engaging the public in the expansion of treatment courts and advancing justice system responses for individuals impacted by substance abuse and mental health disorders. She's also a recipient of the Secretary of the Army's Public Service Medal. Mary is an actor, producer, and activist who played Deputy National Security Advisor Kate Harper on The West Wing, a Tony-nominated Broadway actress. She's also known for a diversity of roles across film, television, and theater, including her portrayal of Deputy U.S. Marshal Mary Shannon on the TV series In Plain Sight, and her Tony-nominated turn as Gretchen in Boeing. Mary is an outspoken advocate for a whole host of causes, from social justice and women's rights to veterans issues and criminal justice reform. Now, please welcome Melissa Fitzgerald and Mary McCormack.
Oh, thank you. What a
Thank
nice
you.
intro.
We always start our interviews by asking, what are you most passionate about?
The obvious answer is family. I'm married and raising some girls, 3 of them. So I'm passionate about that. That feels like a project that I don't want to mess up. And then I'm passionate about my work. I love to work, and I would say to find work. I love all acting, but when you get lucky enough to do something like The West Wing, it sort of elicits the most passion, right? Because if you can do what you love to do and affect, the world a little bit along the way, that is the ideal. That's the perfect storm of passion in your work. It doesn't always happen, so I feel very lucky when it does.
I am definitely passionate about my family. I do not have children. I'm not married, but I have brothers and nephews and parents and godchildren and dogs. And I'm very passionate about them. Mary knows that. And also about my family of friends, and definitely my work. I love getting to do the work that I do now in justice system reform for individuals with substance use, mental health disorders, so that they receive treatment, recovery support instead of incarceration. And that's been a passion and my life's work really for the past 10 years, over 10 years, almost 11 years. I can't believe it. But so that is definitely my passion.
So take us back. Where do your collective passions for acting and for service come from? Were those things that you have always cared about even when you were growing up?
Yeah, I think for me, I was always into acting. Like I could sing when I was very little, and that sort of leads you to plays. And I just realized I just loved it right away. I loved the gang. I loved rehearsals. I loved staying up late with adults. Like I didn't do it professionally. I just did it sort of locally when I was young, but I loved it. And I thought, the way young people do, you think you can do anything. I was like, oh, I'll just do that, and luckily I get to do that, which is incredible. I feel so lucky. And service, I think, was part of our life growing up. I always witnessed my parents, having service as part of their life. And it was just something that was sort of expected and just part of our lives. So yeah, it never sort of had to be taught. It was sort of taught by example.
I would say the same exact thing. My parents were very, they set a very strong example of service, and it wasn't just something that you added on. It was just part of the mix, part of what you did, part of your day. And, my dad has been well, he retired, but he was a judge for my whole adult life. And for him, he was so passionate about it and really passionate about helping people through the justice system. And I'm sure that impacted my turn that I took. But I also did love acting growing up. I was very passionate about that. And like Mary, I was like, well, how hard could it be? You know, I didn't know anybody who did it. I learned how hard it could be. But I loved it. And it's interesting because I left that out when you asked me what my passions were. And I had the opportunity to do a play with Martin Sheen this fall at the Kennedy Center. We got to do this really lovely play called Love Letters. And I'd forgotten, I'd been so immersed in the work that I do now that I've really let go of that creative piece of me aside from our book. And being able to do that again reminded me how important that is to me and to my life, whether I do it for a living or not, which I don't do it for a living.
It was so beautiful. I know I'm biased. I know
you are very biased.
I am not. I'm completely subjective on this. It was gorgeous. It was heartbreaking. Heartbreaking play, but then Melissa and Martin have this beautiful friendship and trust in each other. And it was just, they did it in front of thousands of people at Melissa's conference, and it was stunning. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was gorgeous.
Oh, thank you, Mary.
It's true. But I think service for me also, Melissa knows this story I told at my mom's funeral recently.
Yeah.
Was, I would just grow up and there was someone in our guest room and I was like, who's that? And she's like, oh, that's Bonnie. And, with some questioning, I'd find out that it was a woman, there was no room at the shelter. And so she was staying at our house until a bed opened up. But it was just sort of woven in. It wasn't sort of talked about. It was just done, which helped, I think. It helped sort of set us on that path.
There's military service in your family as well.
Certainly in mine, I'm sure in Melissa's too, and most American families. Yeah. So I do every year I do the Memorial Day concert in Washington because it's it's a lovely event and it's nonpartisan and it's just a way to sort of reach out to Gold Star families and service members and say thank you.
It's a beautiful, beautiful event, and it's on PBS, and it actually lives there. You can watch it anytime you want, and I recommend it. And Mary is a real. I know that it's very meaningful to you, and she does it every year and brings her children.
My dad was a Marine, and very proud of it. And I have lots of service members in my family, but I think it's a nice opportunity for us all as a country. It's you think cookouts and beer and stuff, but it's nice to take a minute to say thank you to everyone who's serving.
Yeah.
We love talking about her. That's interesting question. Well, Melissa certainly has a story about that.
Mine for sure. I'd always been involved, as Mary had been, in service, and I started a nonprofit before I ever got to West Wing and did it throughout, working with historically underserved teens in Los Angeles on a mentoring theater program, and then took that to Uganda right after West Wing ended, like literally a couple of weeks after I was on a plane. But the work that I'm doing now for the past 11 years at this national nonprofit called Allrise started when I lost a dear friend to addiction. And Martin said to me, why don't you come to DC with me to a conference, this fantastic organization that's championing treatment courts, treatment instead of incarceration for people who have substance use and mental health disorders who've gotten involved in the justice system. And I said, that sounds great. I talked to my dad about it. Turns out my dad had started one of these courts in Philadelphia. He was one of the people that started. So it was sort of the perfect storm in a way. And I came to the conference with Martin. And at that conference, I met thousands of people who are working in treatment courts, judges, prosecutors, defense counsel, treatment providers, law enforcement, all working to make sure that when someone is arrested and enters the justice system who does have a substance use and mental health disorder, if appropriate, that they get evidence-based treatment, recovery support so that they can return to our communities healed, productive, and living lives of which they're proud. and to a person. And my dad says this too, that, working in a treatment court's been the highlight of my career in criminal justice because people get better. Before, if they come back into my courtroom, it was because they'd been rearrested. Now, when they come back into my courtroom, it's to invite me to a graduation or a wedding or to introduce me to their children or to tell me they got a new job. So, who doesn't, want to work in something where there's so much hope and hope in our justice system, hope in an actual courtroom. So Martin introduced me to that and my dad. And, I became a supporter. They had just launched their veterans division, which is part of, Allrise is the umbrella. Justice for Vets lives under that umbrella. It's specific to veterans. And Mary has been an ambassador since the very beginning. And they had just launched that. And I got involved in that. And, the story was the CEO at the time said, we're looking for someone to head up our veterans division. And I said, gosh, if I were a veteran, I'd throw my hat in the ring. And a few days later, he called back and he said, were you serious? And I said, yeah. And I was sitting in my apartment in the Hollywood Hills. And he said, when can you start? And it was October. And I said, well, how about January? And he said, how about Monday? And I said, how about January? And he said, how about Monday? And I started Monday.
Oh my God.
I know you might not even know that story, Mary, but I did
a long time ago. I forgot that how that's
yeah. I got on a plane. I came to DC. I stayed on couches and looked for an apartment, and that was it. That was almost 11 years ago, and it's been so gratifying and wonderful, and one of the great joys of it has been all the support that the West Wingers have given our work, and it has certainly elevated my ability to do my job, to have all this support. And Mary has been, of course, front and center, as she always is. And so has Martin and Janelle and Allison and Richard and Dulé. Dulé was just on Celebrity Jeopardy for us and played for Allrise. So it's, Josh Moline, everybody. It's been a real...
it's a good family that way. We really are. To answer your question that way too, it's like we are... I care about the stuff I care about sort of intrinsically. And then I care about randomly a dance organization in New Jersey that Dulé cares. Because if Dulé cares about it, we all care about it. It's sort of like, we describe it as one of us sends up the bat signal and everyone's we're on this text chain. We have a West Wing text chain. And, I don't think a couple days go by before someone needs a video or a post or show up at an event or whatever. So yeah, we sort of all it's helped our friendship a lot too. I think it's helped maintain it. We're all close anyway, but it's like acts as like a glue, because everyone's lives get so busy. You have jobs and kids and travel and, a whole bunch of stuff to juggle. And I think that's, it's hard to sort of work in friendships like that. But I think the service has helped us stay even closer.
Yeah, for sure. It has.
Yeah.
And I found that in the rest of my life too. I found so many of the things that have kept my friendships together have been around volunteering or doing activities together.
Yeah.
Because they're more fun.
Yeah.
And they're your people. If they, they get what matters to you, then.
Yeah, that's right. They care just because.
Yeah.
And they'll show up. And that's the other thing that this group does. This group shows up, and not just in small ways, but in big ways. Mary came down for our conference. Everybody else has come to our conference too. Martin, Mary, everybody. And that's not an easy, light lift. It's a heavy lift.
Easy when you get to see you do that play.
So I think that's part of what makes the book so amazing. As pop culture enthusiasts and a lot of what Nancy and I do and have done over the years is in-depth research for the Television Academy. So we thought we knew a lot about the West Wing, and we've watched every episode more than once and loved the show. But this book is such an amazing view of what happened behind the scenes in a way that we had not experienced before, but also just this beautiful family of people like you were just talking about. So for anybody that's a West Wing fan that thinks they have read a lot or know everything about the West Wing, this book is really special. And the way you communicate with each other in the book is really beautiful. So what was the inspiration of writing the book together?
Well, first of all, I couldn't think of anyone I would rather write this with than Mary. So that when it started off there, but I was approached because I live in DC by a friend, now a friend of Mary's too, Kevin Walling. And he had friends who were book agents, and they said, would you do a behind the scenes of The West Wing? And I thought, that's not really my book to write. That's someone else's book to write. And that's Aaron's book or somebody else's book to write. And then I went and I was thinking about it. And I thought, maybe if it is about the friendships and why we're together 20 years later, and that service is the critical component. And I was at, Mary and I were both at Alice and Jenny's birthday party over a piece of cake, and we were talking about it. And Mary's like, "Yes, service, let's do it." And
it was COVID. Was it COVID or just pre-COVID?
No, it was just before COVID. It was November before COVID. It was 2019, and it was November because it was Allison's birthday, and we were having a piece of cake. And I remember Michael, Mary's husband, was standing behind you, and he was like, "Guys, it's a lot of work. I don't think you're."
I'm sure we'd had a drink or two.
Fine.
It feels like we'd had a drink or two and a piece of cake because it all sounded good. And then during COVID, we pitched it, which was so much fun because we were like, we'd never pitched a book before, and we did a big, document. We were proud of it, and we loved like coming up with all the angles, and we thought we could do this and it was all fun, and nothing else was happening. And then we sold it, which was super exciting. And then the work began, and we were like, what have we done?
Uh-oh.
Oh my God, what have we done? The selling part was so exciting. We were like, cheers to us. We're killing it.
Yeah.
And we had to write it. And we're like, turns out writing's really hard.
Yeah.
Like hats off to all the writers.
So hard.
With. Yeah. I mean, I'm literally like in awe of all of you because holy cow.
And we did hundreds of interviews, there were so many good things about doing that during COVID because we got to see our friends and talk about the show and talk about our friendships and service. And that was great. Then we went back over and culled through all those interviews and had to try and come up with a book. And it was interesting because, as we both said, we wanted to start off by having it be this sort of friendship service, some behind the scenes. But as we did more and more interviews, more things came out that we thought, gosh, we got to put that in. Like, there are a bunch of key episode chapters where we do deep dives into episodes and where people are talking about a scene that they shot. And they were just so interesting. We thought we can't not put that time that Richard was talking about trying not to laugh and how he had to run around the corner. That's just so interesting.
Yeah. We had crazy. I think that made one of the things that makes this book special, besides the service aspect, which we're really proud of, is that we had so much access, that we're insiders. Like we were there. Yeah. So they talk to us in a different way, and we have a different take on all of it because it's not it's not reporting. It was actually our experience. And I think that makes a really special book for wingnuts. We call hardcore fans our wingnuts. So that's, hopefully if he's the wingnuts, then we've done our job.
Yeah. And,
oh, good.
Yay.
Yeah, good.
And so much love.
Yeah. And
it was really fun.
I don't think fan books are usually written from that perspective. So I think it's, that's a real nice, it gives it a nice flavor, I think, I hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Because we're fans of the show.
I love that you kept the episodes in because that was
good.
We went back and watched those specific episodes again, and it was like
we could have done
there's
more.
So many more and so many more stories. We cut so much out of it, and it's not a short book. I mean, we set out to write something about half as long as the one we wrote, and there's still so much more. And we were joking that we want to write a part 2. I don't know if we really do. I'm just saying this, but since I know, I no, because I'm at work, but otherwise, we did, it's called What's Next, and our second book could be called What's Left. There's so much left.
And now what's next?
Yeah. And where did that title come from?
So go ahead, Melissa, you do it.
No, you go ahead if you want.
Well, so in the pilot, it's Martin, it's the president's tagline. He says it a lot throughout the series. And the way that came about, this is actually so cool, I think. In the end of the pilot, Tommy Schlamme was like, there's something about it, the ending that wasn't quite true to the energy of the White House. Like the energy of the White House when he visited, and he talked to us extensively about this, was that there was this constant flow of work. And as soon as something was done, someone was handing you a piece of paper, and then you were signing it and handing it to someone else, that it was never finished. And so he said to Aaron, I would love, instead of sort of ending it like a play, I would love to sort of pull back on it and get the sense that it's continuing, that the work continues. And so could we just, with your permission, let's do that. And of course he jokes and says Aaron had to write a line for it because he's he's a writer and loves words. So he came up with the president saying, "What's next?" And that became, and it was it's lovely because it sort of says like it never ends, right? Service never ends. There's always something else to do. We hand the baton to the next person and we receive a baton from someone else and we keep going. So in Aaron's brilliance, he took 2 words and had this beautiful sort of, blessing for the work continuing, for the series continuing, but also for the work continuing. And yeah, I just love it. It's a great tagline for the president. And it's a great tagline for all of us to sort of remember that, you finish one project and there's more to do. And so it seemed appropriate for the book because of our angle.
Yeah. And we always, Mary and I always say, like, what's next is our reader. And our reader is what's next. And every one of us is what's next. Each one of us is what's next. And what we plan to do with the time we have left while we are here, that's what's next. And, as we get a little bit older, as certainly as I do, I feel like that's less and less. So we got to figure out what's next. Keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think part of the brilliance of Aaron Sorkin and John Wells is the fact that they created something that is so timeless. We have a friend who's an activist, and she basically has West Wing on a loop because it's the thing that keeps her.
She's a wingnut.
She's a wingnut, and it keeps her optimistic. And in relevance wise, I mean, we literally were watching the final episode of season 1 an hour before the assassination attempt.
Oh God.
Yeah.
So and there's just so many things throughout the series that are happening. In
some ways it's depressing because you realize like, we haven't made any like an essay about, an episode about the environment, an episode about gun control, an episode and all these issues that we have not only not fixed, we sort of gone the opposite direction, right?
Yeah.
And it's incredible how precious.
But why do you think the wingnuts find such hope in the show?
I think it's a tonic. It's like nice to know.
Yeah.
I think it's true. I think there are tons of people in Washington who are there for the right reason, who are there to do the most good for the most people, and I think we lose sight of that because the loudmouths are loud and, the toxicity is louder than, people just plugging away, doing what's next. And I think it's a tonic. I think it's nice to remember that. It's nice to believe that, that aspirational aspect of the show is really comforting and important to remember, to not lose hope.
Yeah, I remember when I went to college, because I grew up with a lot of people who worked for the government, including my dad, and as an ADA, assistant district attorney, and a judge. But I remember someone made a joke about lawyers and government workers, and I legitimately didn't get it because they were the best, smartest, most committed people I knew. And they could have been making so much more money doing anything else than what they chose to do. And I think there is something really, really inspiring about that. And I think that The West Wing was hopeful. It was aspirational. It appealed to our best. And, I live in Washington, D.C. now, and I meet a lot of these young people who are top of their class, who could be making a ton of money elsewhere and working far less hard. And they're really giving their youth to making our country better. And I feel like watching The West Wing makes me feel that government should be a force for good in people's lives. And when people need government, it needs to be there for them to lift them up.
I mean, it's hard to imagine, right? Because we've lost all middle ground. It seems like it's so divisive. There's no gray area anymore.
Yeah.
So maybe
I think there are people who want that still, people who work in government who want that. I think there are those people. And I feel like I think it would have to be in Aaron's, capable hands to create something from that. I think it would be challenging, but I think it was challenging then too. We felt that those times were divisive too. And yet The West Wing grew out of that.
Yeah, but there used to be
it is different.
There used to be a two-party system where it was about checks and balances, right? It was about two sides feeling really passionately and compromising and coming up with some point in the middle of the line that that everyone agreed on. And now it doesn't seem to be that. Like no one's voting for what's best; they're voting just to hurt the other side, as opposed to, Anyway. Anyway, we could go on down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a rabbit hole. So let's talk about your lovely castmates again. Can you each think of maybe one thing that you learned about either someone in the cast or about the way the show was made that you didn't know before that really surprised you when you were writing the book?
I did learn quite a few things about Richard Schiff that not necessarily that I didn't know, but I got a deeper dive into his background as an activist, starting when he was young, and also, his connection to the Spalding, his personal connection. I certainly learned more about a lot of things. I learned more about Allison Janney's connection, her family connection from like her great aunt and grandmother being involved in Planned Parenthood from the early days. I did know that her mother was very involved in Planned Parenthood because I knew her mom, great woman. And, but I didn't know the sort of the family history there. Brad, I mean, I knew the family history there and his connection.
Did you know Brad's whole story of auditioning and that whole thing? I didn't know it that in depth.
I don't think I knew it that in depth, but I did know it. I did know it, but not that in depth.
Can you tell a little bit of that to tease the book?
Go ahead, Melissa, you do that one.
Well, he was told by his agent after auditioning, it's not going to happen. It's just absolutely like there's a long story and I don't want to give it away because it's so good in the book and we tell it so well. And I encourage everybody to get the book to read this story. But
there's a lot of it.
But I think what's really funny is like the agent saying, and it was on a note too somewhere saying like, not gonna happen. He's not gonna get cast in this, like give it up. And he did not give it up. And it was either
say not sexy enough, not funny enough.
Yeah, not sexy, not funny. Yeah, and here we are all those years later, sexy, funny, and playing the role.
Yeah, but he sort of forced the issue.
He totally forced the issue. And he knew that was the part he wanted. And then he was up for a different part. They told him he was going to do a different part. And he knew that was not the right part for him. That he was definitely a Josh, not a Sam.
We learned a lot about, I think one really fun discovery mode for us was when we went into all the casting. Like we were lucky enough to get to John Levy, who's the casting director of he's directed so many great things that everyone knows, but he did do The West Wing years and years ago. And he gave us access to his binders, which are like, I think 3 or 4 huge binders of lists. And
gold.
Feedback and deals and it's just all the potential like casting brainstorming lists. And so there was a whole list of which we put in the book of different presidents that they were thinking about. And that's fun. We found, unfortunately for me, because I'm an idiot, we found an early brainstorming thing for the role of Mandy, and it said Mary McCormack not interested in series television. Yeah, no, I know.
But you know what? It all worked out. It all worked out.
However, so that was fun. That was a deep dive into some real West Wing trivia. We were lucky.
Yeah. And like that someone was cast for one day as the president, and we're not going to say who, because again.
Oh, we say it in the book.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, no, I know. I just wanted to make sure. I wanted to make sure.
I get it.
In the book. Oh no, we dished it up. We dished it up.
We dished it out in the book.
Yeah,
100%. I mean, we feel like, there was an army of people who created the show, and we wanted to make sure that as many of them as we could. There's so many that we couldn't interview just because the book is already, almost 600 pages. But the ones that we could, we felt that was really important to include them because this was a family. We are a family, and you can't write a book about the West Wing family and not include, the cousins or the siblings.
Yeah. And that family thing, I mean, you know, Melissa, it was one of the reasons we decided to write the book too, was that, or the way we decided to write it, to incorporate the crew as well, because Martin sort of, and John and everyone, John Wells and Aaron, everyone set that tone right from the beginning, that the cast is no more important than the crew. Yeah. The principal actors are no more important than the background actors. And that sort of was the way the show was run. It's to John Wells' credit, it is the way he runs all his shows. And is proud of it and should be, you know, because it's, everyone loves to work on his shows because of it. It's just a really respectful place to be. And if you're going to spend 16 hours somewhere, it's nice to sort of, you know, be treated that way.
Yeah. And it sounds like Martin Sheen really sets that tone.
100%. Melissa has a great story in the book, which I think we can share. Sure. From one. Go ahead, Melissa. Take it away.
Yeah. Well, you might want to start with your little phrase that you always say, Mary, about
it says number one goes. So there's an expression in television, and it is, as number one goes, so goes the show. Number one referring to number one on the call sheet, the principal actor. And it is true that almost always, if the number one is sort of a jerk, the show is a little bit broken throughout, because the other actors, the younger actors, learn from that. They sort of go, oh, well, if they're going to, we can all do that. Okay, we all do that. Whereas if number one sets the tone as sort of, you know, professionalism and kindness, the other actors generally follow, and the crew.
And Martin certainly did that for us. And I know, you know, John Spencer too. And they talked about it. They took their role as sort of the elder statesman on this show very seriously. And, you know, one of my first days of, well, I think it was my very first day of work after the pilot, when the show got picked up, I remember, you know, there was a scene with a lot of background artists in the scene, and Martin and I think I had, you know, one line or half a line, and I was standing there, and Martin comes, and we're ready to go, and the producers are there, and the director, and Martin starts introducing himself to each and every background artist that was there. Handshake, look in the eye. Martin Sheen, pleasure to meet you. You know, happy to have you with us. What's your name? Where are you from? And really, you know, and I remember, of course, watching the producers, looking back and forth. And I thought, what's he doing? He's teaching all of us how this is going to go down from here on out. That people are going to be more important than anything else, that we are going to treat each other with dignity. We are going to treat each other with kindness, and that people are the most important. And, you know, certainly there's nobody more professional than Martin, and who's more on time and more on top of everything himself, and set that tone as well. But he also set a tone for kindness. And, you know, I think that matters. And I know Dulé, when he was young, when he started, and he told us in one of his interviews, when he went on to be number one on Psych, he said, I went to that show Psych, and he said, it's my turn now to do what Martin did for us.
I love how you talk about Dulé tap dancing behind backstage.
He's amazing.
He is amazing.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, that was, I mean, how many opportunities like that do you have in life to go to work and have one of the greatest tap dancers alive just start tap
dancing with Yo-Yo Ma? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Alrighty.
Yeah, typical day at the office.
Yeah, and James Taylor's playing later in the week. What? What?
When we did the reunion, Hartsfield's Landing, the reunion for When We All Vote a few years ago, 4 years to be exact, when Dulé started tap dancing just on the actual stage, I just was like, oh gosh, I really missed this. Really, really missed this.
Yeah. So we talked about Allrise and Justice for Vets, but we haven't talked about Voices in Harmony yet. So tell us a little bit about that.
So Voices in Harmony which it lives in a certain way, but not as an organization right now. But we worked with at-risk teens, like, you know, historically underserved teens in Los Angeles, and who weren't getting arts education in their schools. And we started a mentoring theater program. So we use theater as a way to mentor teens. And so we had professional actors, writers, and directors all volunteer. And we would, over the course of a 6-month program on Saturday afternoons, we would work and do workshops together And at the end of that period of time, each teenager had a mentor who was a professional actor. They would work with a professional writer to write a short play based on a societal issue of our choosing together. And then a director would direct it, like a 10-minute or less play. And then we would fully produce these evenings of theater at pretty major theaters like the Cannon Theater, the big theaters in Los Angeles. And we had so much support from the West Wing family, but also from Warner Brothers. And I had been doing it for many years before that, and it was very grassroots. And then we developed a classroom-based program that we then gave to Los Angeles Unified School District many years ago. And then we took a version of that theater program to northern Uganda and worked with former abducted child soldiers and sex slaves there, and other teens who had been displaced by the war. And I brought a group of actors and a director and writer, and we worked together creating these 3 short plays on the issues they wanted to tackle. And they had been brutalized by Joseph Kony and the rebel war there. And the topics that they wanted to tackle were peace building and reconciliation and HIV/AIDS, like attack the myths, because so many people were dying of AIDS because of misinformation. And that was a really transformative experience. I think I'd mentioned happened right after West Wing ended. And I spent quite a few years working on that, using that to create a program where, activism around the issue. And at one point, which may be pertinent to this particular podcast, GE made a surprise announcement at the International Rescue Committee, one of our partners, at their annual honorary dinner, that they would donate $1 million to educate girls in northern Uganda.
Unbelievable work. And Mary, we also wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a bit about Moms Demand Action.
Moms Demand I've been involved with for a long time, because how do you not, it just doesn't seem to be, they are doing incredible work, thank the Lord. And it's weird because, when you look at sensible gun laws and Americans and how they feel about them, I forget what the percent, it's like 80%, 90%. Americans are for them. So it really is about, dirty money and NRA and a whole bunch of other stuff that is incredible that still is happening, and that our kids and all of us are still at risk, that we can't, go to a movie theater, go to the mall without my kids. Literally, we all say goodbye differently now, like when we leave the house, which is so messed up. Like, they should just be able to say goodbye, bye, Mom. They should be able to yell it, but don't, because they're afraid. So it's so sick. It's just so sick. So Moms Demand's a lab for me. And Melissa and I, when we were looking at the book, because there's so many things we care about, we were sort of trying to carefully choose so that we felt like we were representing, a bunch of, we didn't want to miss anything, so the Trevor
and we
Project,
did, but
and we did. Oh my God, we did. Of course we did. There's so it was impossible. And also we wanted to honor the passion projects of our cast, so we were, we started there. And then also I wanted to talk about the Trevor Project, because they're also doing incredible work for LGBTQ community and youth at risk in crisis. And there's such a mental health crisis in our country anyway for youth right now. But if you add on top of that, the homophobia and the horrific policy that is happening and in danger of happening, it just can feel hopeless for LGBTQ youth. So I don't know when my cousin Carl Nassib, who was the first NFL player to come out and did so publicly on Instagram, which was so moving and important. I think it was during our writing, Melissa, or
it was during our writing. Yeah.
So we just thought instantly we have to include that, because I'm so proud of Carl, but also I thought, how many lives did he just save? Because he is an NFL player, because he is. He said that great sentence when he came out. He said, "I shouldn't have to do this."
Right.
I hope for one day when this is private, or when one day this is unnecessary, as it should be. Who should have to talk about sexuality to anyone ever, much less
ever.
online. But how brave of him to do that, knowing how many lives he might save.
Yeah. And he's very active raising money for the Trevor Project also. So
100%. Yeah.
And I just wanted to give a shout out too, when I had said, Voices in Harmony, our partners were International Rescue Committee and International Medical Corps. And International Medical Corps, turns out, is Janelle's, one of her service organizations that she cares about. But they're doing incredible work all over the world in hot zones, and really, having watched what they do firsthand, I was so impressed.
Yeah. One of the things we hear from people a lot, women in our community and people all over, is there's so much to tackle. There's so many things people want to fight for. How do you have advice for someone who wants to get involved, doesn't know where to start? How do you get involved with one of your organizations or something else?
Well, in our organizations, you can read our book, because we have websites in the book and definitions, like the sort of mission statements of the different organizations. And that was really important to us. And thank you to our publisher, Dutton, for allowing us to do that, because it added a lot of pages. But please go to our book. That's a great place to start. Google's another great place to start. And I mean, I think a lot of people who probably listen to your podcast and people who are wingnuts, they are already doing things in their communities and internationally. But I'll just speak for myself. I don't pretend to have major advice for anybody, but for myself, it just starts from what moves me personally at that moment. And it's different things at different times. And find a way, if I am useful, is there something that I can contribute to this cause? And if not, is there somebody that I know that maybe can contribute to this cause?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. I know what you mean. The world can seem, when you start to think about, you take it all in, it can feel like, well, then why do anything? And that's that is debilitating. So I don't know.
Start.
I think start somewhere. Yeah, just little things.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. We've been so lucky, and continue to be so lucky. Actors are lucky. Sport athletes are lucky.
Yeah.
Famous people are lucky because they can, they get asked to do things and can affect big change with very little effort, and that's fun and fortunate. But God, we need everyone just doing tiny things too. Just school board things. Like we need, just soup kitchen.
I know. Yes. Yeah. Those are
all the
huge things.
We need all the things and
things.
little things too. And so, if it's if it's just helping a neighbor, it doesn't have to be sweeping things, Lord knows.
And there are websites, there are, lots of places to look, and schools. I mean, even if you go to Starbucks, I know has a board. Sometimes they have volunteer opportunities on the boards. But I remember when I was doing some work on advocacy around ending the war in northern Uganda, I was at a university and someone said, well, we have a lot of problems here at home. Why aren't you working on our problems here at home? You should be doing that. And I found that to be very interesting. And I said, well, give me an example of what you think is a problem that you think I should be working on. And she said, well, veterans need help in our country. And I said, you are 100% right. And are you doing anything? And she said, me? No. And I said, well, that seems like that's your passion. Like you're passionate about it. I bet you could contribute a lot to that. This is what I happen to be passionate about right now. And I'm working on this right now. Turns out I ended up working on behalf of veterans later. But I'm like, right now, this is what I'm working on. But you have a tremendous amount to contribute yourself. I say that's your passion. Go for it. And she did. So it is interesting sometimes how we think that there are people who are supposed to be doing something, but it's all of us. It's each and every one of us has something to contribute.
One time I was feeling overwhelmed and I asked my dad about it, and I was like, and I was listing all the things in my life that weren't working. And I was like, and this and this and this, and I have to do this. And I was like sort of in a tizzy, and I said, and my windshield's dirty and I can't even see it out of the windshield. And he went, just clean the windshield. Just clean the windshield. Sometimes when I feel overwhelmed, I think I'm just going to clean the windshield so I can see the other problems. Like just do one little thing and then things become easier, It's a little.
What's that book, Bird by Bird?
I don't know it.
Oh, I'm going to give it to you. Janelle gave it to me years ago. It's really good.
And I think it's also what you were saying earlier, that you help each other and support their passions and their work. And I think that's a place for people to start as well. Like
that's
if you don't know,
great.
like what are your friends worried about?
And it's more fun anyway.
It's more fun to have
a community. If you can combine community and service, it's way more fun.
So much more fun.
Yeah. So I think you're right. That's a great place to start. Be like, hey, let's go do a shift at a thing together, because, just makes it.
No, it's funny that you just brought that up. It reminded me when I was living with my friend Anne at the time when we started Voices in Harmony. We'd have all our meetings in our living room at night, and she would sometimes make brownies and come down and volunteer cookies. She makes very good chocolate chip cookies, but and I would be like, "Oh, thank you so much, and thanks for letting us have another meeting here, tonight." And she goes, "Don't thank me. Are you kidding? You just gave me an opportunity to be of service, and I didn't have to leave my house." She's like, "You're giving opportunities." So yeah.
So I want to stress again to people listening that this book is not just for West Wing fans, because it is so much more than just a backstage look at the West Wing. So what do you both hope that people take away from the book when they read it?
I don't know. I mean, I hope the fans do. I hope we get a stamp of approval from our fans, because the Wingnuts mean business. And I think we deliver on that, because we had such crazy access, but I think you're right. And I hope other people respond to it too, for sort of its general discussion of connectedness. I hope that we have a good discussion about that, and then a sort of push to remember how service should be and is so fulfilling, what can be such a fulfilling part of all our lives, and it doesn't have to be big, huge things. It can be, go to the website for Moms Demand and see how easy it is to do something. It's so easy to do little things, tiny things. I mean, send an email. It matters to them, and they will tell you big things you can do, and a huge scale of tinier things you can do. And you can make a real difference that way. So I hope we inspire some of that, And
I hope that, same as Mary, I hope that people enjoy the ride of reading the book and get to revisit some of, something they loved for the people who loved it, and be introduced to something for the people who don't know it as well. And then, I imagine that a lot of the people reading the book are already doing things in their communities. And I hope that maybe they'll be introduced to some more organizations and learn a bit about some of the ones they haven't.
And it's fun too, if you love Allison Janney, to hear about why she's passionate about the things she's passionate about, and how she's involved, and how you might get involved too. And so it's sort of fun to have that insight, I think.
Yeah. Everybody, please go out and get the book. It's amazing. You will not be sorry.
Great Christmas gift, holiday gift.
It is.
Yes.
It is. That's good, Mary.
Gift. That is a
back to school gift. It's
back to
school.
Labor Day gift.
Yeah. Halloween gift.
St. Patrick's Day.
There you go. Whatever day it is, a National Ice Cream Day was, last week. You should have bought a book for that. Because you can pre-order it.
Right. So people can pre-order it right now. Is that
definitely?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Excellent.
And we're doing a couple live events too. It should be really
and a bunch
fun.
of signed books. There's opportunities to get signed books. And
where can they go to find out? Where can they go to get?
They can follow us on social media for sure, because we are posting away.
Yeah, we are.
So much in my life. So we're posting. So if you follow us, Mary, your handle.
Oh, I'm Mary C. McCormack on Instagram.
I'm at Maffy Fitz at Instagram also.
Excellent. Well, we have one last two-part question. It's a doozy.
All right.
What's your dream for yourself? And what's your dream for women, or Mary, maybe your daughters?
My dream for myself, I would like a little more sleep. No, I don't know. My dream for myself is, to continue to find fulfilling work that I'm passionate about. I mean, I think, and to keep my family safe, and, I would love more time with my family. My kids are leaving the nest. For women and my daughters and all of our daughters, our collective daughters, is to not, like my cousin Carl said, that it shouldn't be a discussion, really. Hopefully one day we won't say she's a strong woman who's accomplished A, B, and C. We'll say there's a strong person who's accomplished that whole pile of stuff. I mean, that would be an ideal thing. Sometimes I work with young actresses, and they are already, I can feel it changing. Their ownership in the world, their voice in the world is different than even I start every email still at 55, and I'm a person who cares about this. I still I try to rewrite all my emails and take out the 8 apologies, for things I haven't done. And I hope for my daughters that they don't have that rattling around in them by the time they get to the writing, demanding email stage. More voice and less emphasis on gender or body parts or any of it. It should be unimportant, and hopefully it's not right now. Lord knows, let's all rally around our presidential hopeful, and because we have a lot of work to do. Lord knows we have a lot of work to do, especially when you look at some of the things the other side is saying and doing. But one day I hope that it is irrelevant. All the physical is irrelevant.
I agree with that 100%, Mary. I guess my dream for myself, that's a really good question. This is similar to Mary's in that, I get to show up for my family and take the best care of them I can, and be a great friend to my friends, be a great aunt and godmother, and that, when I leave the world, that it's a slightly better place because I was here. That would be my big dream. And then for the world, I think that we have everything we need to solve all the world's problems if we all participate and care enough to actually do it. And I believe we can. And that would be my dream, to see that realized. Yeah. And that's, I guess, for daughters and sons.
Thanks for listening to the Passionistas Project and our interview with Melissa Fitzgerald and Mary McCormack. Follow them on Instagram at Mary C. McCormack and Maffey Fitz to find out how to get your own copy of What's Next, A Backstage Pass to the West Wing, or pre-order your copy on Amazon. Since we're not only business partners, but best friends and real-life sisters, we know how unique and truly special our situation is. We know so many solopreneurs, activists, women seeking their purpose, and more who are out there doing it all on their own. They often tell us they wish they had what we have. So we've created a space for them and you to join our sisterhood, where trust, acceptance, and support are the cornerstones of our community. By joining, you become part of our family. We'll give you all of our sis tips on building meaningful relationships through the power of sisterhood, and all the tools you need to thrive in 3 key areas: business growth, personal development, and social impact. You'll learn from our panel of Power Passionistas, who are experts on topics like transformational leadership, letting go of perfectionism, the power of community, and so much more. You can connect with like-minded women and gender non-conforming, non-binary people who share your values and goals in chat spaces, at online Passionistas pajama parties, and virtual and in-person meetups. And you can register for our exclusive series of online courses designed to help you tap into your intuition, find your purpose, bring your mission to fruition, and integrate diversity, equity, inclusion in every aspect of your plan. Be sure to visit thepassionistasproject.com to sign up for our free membership to join our worldwide sisterhood of passion-driven women who come to get support, find their purpose, and feel empowered to transform their lives and change the world. We'll be back next week with another Passionista who's defining success on her own terms and breaking down the barriers for herself and women everywhere. Until then, stay passionate.